All right, we'll give everybody a few minutes here to get ready, and then we will begin. Today is September 16th. Quite a lot going on in this country, as there always is. Let me try to get our Rumble broadcast started here. Keeps failing on Rumble. Hey, Emily, how are you? I'm just trying to get Rumble started here, but Rumble doesn't look like it's going to happen. So we'll have to transfer it over to Rumble tomorrow morning and make sure we get that information over there. A lot of these interconnecting streams make it difficult when you're using central software to broadcast on multiple locations. So we should be live on YouTube, which we are. Doesn't look like we'll get Rumble today. It's worked pretty much every other time, and we're trying it out today, but we should also be live broadcasting on TikTok under the Rice Report. So if you're following me at all, TikTok, the Rice Report, you should be able to log in there and see this live streaming there as well. So without further ado, let's get started here today. President Trump is going to be speaking on a Twitter space at 7 p.m., 1 hour from now, 58 minutes from right now. So I'm going to try to check in on that for a little bit. I know he's announcing some crypto project for the banking system. I don't have any any expectation of that being a good project from what I've read so far, but I want to hear it. Listen to everything. I think it's important. Listen to everything and sort out what you think is good, what you think is bad. Pray into things. Make sure that you're always touching in the Holy Spirit to discern what is real and what is not. They're saying Rumble is working. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you, Infinite Light 777. Appreciate that. So we're going to start out the way we always do: money, politics, and religion. Same methodology, same bat channel, same bat story. But we're going to run through the events of today. The economy is certainly when you look at problems in the world, you have problems that stem from regions far beyond your own reach, far beyond your own comprehension. Then you have certain things that are right in front of your face. So I always try to start with money, because I think it's really important. I'm not a lover of money by any stretch, but I am a lover of freedom, and money does create freedom and sovereignty. So this whole show that we do every night, every time that we do this, the whole purpose behind this here is to give you some information to help you make better decisions in your life. I hope those better decisions in your life create more prosperity. Prosperity creates freedom, and I hope that you take that freedom and share it with other people. So let's kick it off with the economy, because I think that that's the easiest place to start. We're going to get into some very difficult topics here today, especially with the assassination attempt number 2 on President Trump. Actually, number 3, if you really think about it. They were trying to arrest another gentleman in between these two who had plans that he had posted online. There are lunatics and possessed souls all over this country right now doing all types of things, and I personally, before we get into it, I personally don't think they're working alone. I think this is far too random of an instance, and we'll go into that a little bit later in the episode. But let's start out with finances. Let's start with the Federal Reserve. So most of you who have eyes to see and ears to hear realize that the economy right now is not on track. It is maybe as far off track as we've been in the last 20 or 30 years. I think that's a very obvious observation for anyone who's paying attention with a delicate eye. Even if you're not really a follower of finance in the markets, you can still see the things around you. Gas is more expensive. Eggs are more expensive. I gave a presentation to a private investor group last week, and a gentleman said, "Where are you getting your inflation numbers?" And I said, well, first of all, they seem large because they're 40-year inflation numbers. So 4 years, we've seen a 35% increase in gas, 22% increase in groceries. That's being kind, depending on what groceries you're buying. And you're looking at a 21% increase in rent since 2020. Those are statistical facts that you can see with your own eyes anywhere that you go. Now, these are all problems that stem from a fiat currency, a fiat environment where a government has the ability to print pieces of paper that people exchange for value, goods, or services. That sounds like a good idea. It really does. When it came out in 1913, first of all the men on the original commission that were voting against the Federal Reserve all died on the Titanic. So no witness, no crime. We have a Federal Reserve. That's historical fact. And along with that, most of the nation was concerned about this new Federal Reserve Bank because it has actually happened here before. Andrew Jackson got rid of a Federal Reserve Bank who was doing the same thing, printing fiat money. In fact, we used revolutionary money during the Revolutionary War. And at that point in time, they were zero coupon bonds, and they kept printing and printing and printing and eventually failed, which is when we created the US dollar. So history does repeat itself, and it repeats itself very directly and very carbon copy of itself when you deal with fiat environments or fiat currencies. So all this money we've printed is just the beginning. because we have one common solution over the past 30 years in this country. Whenever we get into economic problems, we print more money. Problems are solved for about 18 months, and then they rear their ugly head again. You keep printing and playing whack-a-mole, and eventually you hit the mole, and you get a 3-year window with no problems. This is now 35 to 40 years down the road. We are dealing with real serious issues, including the fact that the Federal Reserve right now has cumulative losses of $188 billion over the last 2 years. Imagine investing in a company that is owed, right? The private Western Central Bank is what the Federal Reserve is. It is a private bank owned by the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans, all the main families. They still earn their money off of the sweat from your backs for printing money. That's all they do. Now imagine a private company that has accounts receivable of $35 trillion. And while they're waiting to be paid back, it doesn't really matter because they can just print more. But while they're waiting to be paid back, they're losing $188 billion every 2 years. Is that a company that you would invest in? Well, you are investing in it. You are the primary payback vehicle for this failing corporation, which is now losing $2 billion per week on average. There are no consequences for this to happen, by the way. There are no consequences for poor management at the Federal Reserve. Jobs cannot really be taken. People could be fired theoretically, but it's a bureaucratic process that involves voting and all types of things. So these are very protected elite class of people that have the best job security in the world with the lowest expectations. This is what happens in communist nations. I'll repeat this. I repeat it almost every episode. Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto simply states that the cornerstone of a communist nation will always begin and end with a central bank. So whether or not you believe you're free or you believe you're not free, the facts of the matter are you have a central bank that dominates your money and monetary policy, meaning that you are actually not free because the slave masters who own this tax farm that we live on, they will always need to be paid back. And now they have set up multiple agencies across the world, not this country. The IRS is not registered in the United States. It is a registered Puerto Rican organization. It's an illegal operation to steal money from you. But until the Fed ends, we will not be free. That is just, there is no free nation with a central bank. It's an illusion. Always has been an illusion, and it always will be an illusion. And the longer we buy into the illusion, the longer our illusion persists to take away our reality. Simple facts. Now, the market is expecting now a 0.5, a half point rate drop later this week at the FOMC. And Powell may do that. I don't try to get into the prediction game. I think 0.5, number one, I showed in the last episode, the last time we did, after a rate rise, the last time we did half point drops in a day, the S&P lost 12% in 2000 and 18% in 2008, immediately following those rate drops. So expect that to happen. But the market is neurotic. You know, one of the things about a fiat system, because fiat currency, the more you inflate the monetary supply, the less value the monetary supply has, which is why prices go up. That, along with coordination between them and more mega corporations, which no one talks about. They say it's one thing or the other. It's not. It is definitely a systematic, coordinated effort. And in these fiat environments where you're losing buying power, the one thing that they do is they force every single person to be a gambler. It's just part of a fiat environment. If the value of your dollar is going down, you simply can't save in dollars because your savings will deplete. So you have to take on risk. You have to learn how to be a hedge fund manager, a stock trader, an options trader, a commodities guy, a bond ladder structure on your own. That's why the entire practice of financial services exists, is because in order for you to exist, you have to outpace inflation through the course of your life, save up enough money, and hope that stockpile of buying power you have upon retirement actually persists. It doesn't get depleted away through inflation, which is happening more and more, as evidenced by the amount of baby boomers who were retired last year who are now back to work. This is one of the saddest days in the United States, where people who are retired, who work their whole life to save enough money, they put together a plan saying, hey, this is the cost of my house, this is the cost of my budget, this is how much money I have saved, I should be able to retire and just enjoy my life, my grandkids. These people are starting to have to go back to work. That's another drain on the jobs in an economy that now has 21 million people in here vying for jobs. So this is really feeding into a feeding frenzy around the job market. The job market just announced today that announced job losses. Now, Announced means that they have done a press release, a press conference, that they've talked on the news about it, that they've put it out there that they're losing jobs, like companies are laying people off. Just the announced job losses is up 193% over last month. That's 193% acceleration in the announced job losses. Now, announced versus actual job losses is a much different ratio. Very few are announced. That's bad news. Nobody's company wants to put out there, hey, we're laying off all these people. Legal departments are the ones who press them to do that for transparency, primarily for publicly traded companies. So private companies don't generally do these announcements. So just the announced job losses are now up 193% from last month. That is almost a 3x jump. Okay, so it's a huge number piling up. This is the highest number of announced jobs. It's about 75,000 announced job losses in August. That is the highest number since 2009, which is smack dab in the middle of the great financial crisis. You're going to find this as a redundant theme in every episode I do, as I'm trying to relate to you in a not so subliminal way that we are approaching numbers that really line up with 2008, 2020, 1987, 1929. All of these numbers, all of this history adds up to be exactly the same. And you need to go onto independent journalists and podcasts to get this information, because CNBC just tells you the last 24, the market just set a new all-time high, which it did. These all-time highs ultimately experience gravity like everything else. And that is a scary thing, that no one is preparing for the gravity, as evidence and information I'm going to share to you in just a moment. Now, along with the jobs, Tupperware, one of the oldest standing consumer goods products in this country, with one of the biggest names. Tupperware, anything that's plastic with a lid, you call it Tupperware. It's kind of like Kleenex. There is no such thing as a Kleenex. It's a tissue, but we call it Kleenex because the brand is so strong. It's an American brand. Tupperware is now announcing they're filing for bankruptcy and moving all their operations to Mexico, along with about 700 other companies over this past year, just since January. When things get too expensive and inflation's out of control and you can't find good workers, you have to move operations to where those three things won't impact your bottom line. So while we blame it on these companies for leaving this nation and these job losses, it's not really their fault. They're as a former CEO of a public company, I can tell you there's only one legal obligation any CEO has, and that's shareholder value. It doesn't matter if you feed kittens to pit bulls, as long as it makes money for the shareholders. That's your only legal obligation. Everything else is esoteric to that per the law. So the CEOs of these companies have difficult decisions to make, and they're deciding to leave this country and go to Mexico, produce cheaper, sell into this country as an exporter, and they will make more profit. When companies have to leave this country to make products to sell into this country, you have a massively broken import-export operation within your government. Period. Point blank. There are so many issues. We talk about assassinations and good guy, bad guy, politician, policy, all these things. We talk about all these things. We rarely talk about antitrust laws, duties of CEOs, why companies are leaving this nation, regulation, overburden on import, overburden on export, free trade. We barely talk about these things that actually impact our bottom line. And Tupperware is making an announcement to the market that they have absolutely no chance of profiting in this country. So now they're moving their operations to Mexico. Again, almost 700 companies have made this decision since January of this year. So this election couldn't be more important from multiple fronts, not just who's going to protect free speech, who's going to protect American jobs, because right now we are losing, foreigners are gaining 3 jobs for every American job lost. That's how the things are unfolding in America right now. It's sad, and I don't like to be the guy who's the doom and gloom guy, but if that's what you want to label me, that's fine. I'm a realist. I'm trying to share actual facts and statistics and not give a glorious tale in the back end of how I think things are happening, so that in the end we ride off on a unicorn and scale back down to earth on the back end of a rainbow. That part may be true, but what is certainly true is the fact that Americans are losing jobs and this economy is getting raked over the coals by poor governance and by poor regulation, overburdened regulation. This is not just happening in consumer goods. It's happening all across the world in every industry. Every government across the world is as corrupt as yours. So if and it's not going to happen on my little show, but if every person watching this show right now was from a different nation, this statement would be true in your country. Every country's government around the world is colluding with one another to take over your nation. They are corrupt, they are paid off, and they will never, ever go away until something happens that actually removes them from their office, because they have strangleholds on everything from the medical system to the media to healthcare. It's all intertwined in every nation, and America is just kind of the bright shining light where it's more obvious to see in this country because we are much more transparent than other nations from a government perspective. And that's kind of like the tallest man in a midget contest. It's really not anything to brag about. It's really, really little transparency here, but it is better than other countries. Now, on top of this, money managers across the globe, for the first time, are unanimous in shorting Brent crude oil. That is the first time that has ever happened where and this is a really good point, that's the first time money managers have ever had unified consensus that oil prices are going down. That's what that's supposed to tell you. Now, what it actually tells me, someone who knows how trading works and how central bankers fund traders to manipulate markets, is that you can guarantee that the price of oil and gasoline is going to go down for the rest of the election season to make Democrats look good. This is not a unanimous consensus bet. There is no possible way that every trader in the world, every money manager in the world unanimously agrees that the price of oil is going down. That is called market manipulation, and it is now directly in front of your face. Whether you choose to believe that or not is completely up to you. But when was the last time that anything in any environment, yet alone financial markets, where people win on the up and downside of investments, when was the last time things were this unified? Really think about what's happening. The markets tell a much bigger story than just money by itself. And one of the stories that the market is telling right now is using the past year to judge what the next year will do. Now, there's the old statement that past performance does not indicate future potential, right? That's an old disclosure on every investment. However, past performance of certain things, when they happen for the first time, tell you a blaring story that's being hidden behind your back. So for the last year, the last 365 days, the last full year of trading in the world, we are seeing for the first time two commodities that are topping the charts on returns. So the two commodities leading the charge for overall return in the market are Bitcoin and gold. Now, Bitcoin did 107 has done year to date, not to date, in the last year, the last 365 days, Bitcoin has gone up 117%. Gold has gone up 33%. The Dow Jones 20%, the S&P 500 26%, and the Nasdaq 18.5%. So, no lie behind that, no speculation behind that, but here's a speculation that I'll give. Because right now the average American, it's a great stat put out today, the average American right now is paying $650 towards the government debt, the federal debt, $650 a month or $8,000 a year, or a total of a little over $100,000 per year, is being paid by every tax-paying home, every taxpayer. So if there's 2 or 3 of you in a home, you're paying more, but the average taxpayer is paying $650 per month towards the federal debt for the lending that they have taken from the central bank. The entire world right now is overweight in stocks. I talked about this a few episodes ago. The average family has about 48% of their net worth in the stock market. Generally, the remaining almost half is in their home. The average portfolio right now is $237,000. That's stock portfolio. That is 2x from last year. And I just told you the returns. Dow was 20, S&P 26, Nasdaq 18.5. This isn't a doubling of their investment from last year. This is a 25% increase plus new money going in. New money going in. Everyone's putting money into the stock market at all-time highs, almost as if they have never read a book on trading or the markets themselves. This is a very dangerous scenario to be in. But the real telling story here is the savings. So traditionally, we're told to save 10% of our income. Right? That's just what I was taught as a kid. 10% of your money, pay yourself first, put it into a savings account. Forget about it. When you need it later, it'll be there. We are saving at a rate of 2.9%, and about 84% of that is overweighted towards those who make more than $100,000 a year. So anybody making under $100,000 a year is not saving money, they're losing money. And those who make between 100 and 250 are saving about 2.9%, and that makes up the bulk of the middle class. So we have the lowest savings rate since 2008 and 2020. along with a time period where we have very high rates. Excuse me. Traditionally, the way that these things work with gold and Bitcoin, commodities, oil, silver, platinum, palladium, anything you want to talk about, commodities based, generally they go down in price while rates go up. So for those of you who are new to finance, you probably hear the terms quantitative easing and quantitative tightening. These are just fancy words. Quantitative easing means printing more money, inflating the monetary supply. Quantitative tightening means pulling money out of the market, deflating the monetary supply. So in theory, in these modern monetary theories, which are complete Keynesian economics garbage, what they generally mean with fancy words, because they don't really want you to know any of these things, what it means is when quantitative easing occurs or money printing occurs, the value of the dollar goes down, meaning that the price of hard assets like gold or Bitcoin or silver, those generally go up. Very simple. We've been in a tightening process where the rates go up, sucking money out of the system, hopefully raising the price or the value of the actual money itself. So in general, while rates are going up, traditionally commodities are going down. That is a 100-year cycle that you can look back for yourself at any given time and find out that during periods of quantitative easing, the value of the dollar goes down, the value of gold goes up. During tightening, it's the exact opposite. What we have just seen over the past year is sort of a great awakening by itself. A lot of people in the market are not falling into the irrational exuberance, which we're seeing once again in the stock market because of fiat currency. Everyone has to gamble. Right now, it's really expensive, so people are gambling hard. I did an episode, $11.4 billion is wagered on the NFL every year by Americans who don't have $11.4 billion. They're betting on football to try to make money to pay their bills. That's how bad it is in America from a statistical standpoint. Now, when we see gold and Bitcoin, who have already gone up 107, Bitcoin 117, gold 33%, what we're seeing is an anomaly in the market, meaning that right now it's so bad that even during quantitative tightening, gold and Bitcoin have still risen and outpaced every stock market return. So what I anticipate seeing in the near future is I anticipate seeing at least a 25% basis point drop later this week by the Fed. I expect to see the stock markets break all-time highs within days of that happening. Then I expect to see the real decline start to begin in the trading volume, because these next level of new highs will produce that gravity that I talked about earlier in this episode. I believe that's coming without question because we're watching it happen right now in China, who is in a complete deflationary environment. Now, China has just reached a deflationary cost method that they haven't seen since 1999. So right now, the price of Chinese goods is just dropping and dropping and dropping, which sounds like a good thing. But when everything is globalized and a player as large as China in the manufacturing sector starts to deflate, you will see global supply chain issues and order issues occurring. That's all going to happen. This is just the way this stuff works. But at that time, I also expect to see Bitcoin and gold really start to move, like really, really start to move. When people start losing money in the stock market, they get scared. Your average person is just an average person. They're not professional traders who remove emotion and make logical decisions. What they see is, oh my God, I lost 8%. I need to go to something safer. That's when you start to see people put money into gold and into silver and platinum and palladium, and ultimately into Bitcoin to try to get the upside of a commodity. Bitcoin is a legal commodity. It has already been deemed an asset without an issuer. It has full legal regulatory oversight and approval. It's the only thing that exists like that in the digital space. It's the only proven commodity all across the board that has regulatory clarity, period. So I always tell people your portfolio should be gold, silver, Bitcoin, raw land, oil and gas, trade the VIX. That's not going to change probably anytime soon. I'm not going to have anything new to tell you. I'm just going to have new material and new stats that prove that that's the pathway forward for those who want to get through this mess we're about to enter with their heads above water and maybe even owning the pool, not just being in the water. That's a good place to start. Now, China, these deflationary prices are really a big issue. Their real estate market is getting killed, and as a large international global trade partner, it's something we certainly need to keep an eye on and be able to, determine whether or not we should be tucking money away, which right now the answer is yes. Stop buying fast food, stop buying whatever you can, tuck away as much cash as you can, buy hard assets with it, sit back, and you'll be able to get through this pretty easily. Also stock up on fuel if you have the space to do it. I don't have a room in my backyard to put a fuel tank out there, but if I did, I would probably be buying gasoline right now because another pipeline burst in La Porte, Texas today. So that's another attack on the U.S. supply infrastructure. And these things are all happening. Also on top of this, before we get into the Trump shooting, the northern border, I've been talking about the northern border for a very, very long time. We don't get any reporting from the northern border, only the southern border. And the southern border for over 19 months now has been considered the most dangerous border in the world, is actually the United States southern border. With all that attention there and all the independent journalists, and God bless like Ben Berkwam and some of these guys who are down there getting video, that is just dedication. With all that attention down there, it's only logical to think that criminals would smuggle in other criminals through another border, which is now happening on video in New York. So we are now seeing New York City cabs that are driving to the Canadian border and picking up migrants and driving them to the city. Yes, that is happening. There are now videos showing this. I'm assuming we'll get real stats on this in about a month because no one's really paid attention. That will only happen really above Washington and above New York. They're not going to mess around anywhere around northern Idaho or any of those places. People are already camped out at those borders. That's been confirmed. We're also starting to see this breakdown in the narrative behind migration, where now the Pope is getting involved. And I'm going to get into that at the end because I think that's a really big topic to talk about. But we also have, a model of destabilization that's happening in this country, and it's a very important thing to talk about. So let's get into the Trump shooting. I think that's the next place to go. So as we all know, yesterday, I try to take Sundays away from social media and from the news and from TV. I just try to go to church, get in the spirit, be with my family, watch a little football with my dad, try to do things that brought me back to my normal life before I realized the world was upside down. It's not like it just changed. It's always been like this. However, I didn't get a chance to really dig into it yesterday, and today I've been working, so I haven't had a chance. There's plenty of people digging into the shooter, Ruth Rauth. His name is pronounced a million different ways. He was taken to federal court today on gun charges and gun charges only, which I find to be fascinating. He's still detained as we speak right now, so I'm assuming one of two things is happening. So the press is saying that he's not talking to law enforcement. I don't trust the press on any of that stuff. I believe that he was caught in a very large crime, and his only option out is to talk, but time will tell if that's the case. Now, MSNBC was there yesterday. Now, they're not, and I looked into this. MSNBC has filmed Donald Trump golfing before. They've done that before. Trump is well known to golf. This was a private golf session for him with friends, so this wasn't something that was put on his public schedule. Didn't know he was there. Randomly, somebody got his schedule, camped out for 12 hours now is the story, that he camped out with food and weapons and scopes and bulletproof plating, which, by the way, wouldn't do any good hung on a fence like that at all. That seems to me to be a decoration of the FBI. Hanging your breastplate that keeps you from, and everything but armor-piercing bullets, hanging in the wind like that. The bullet's just going to hit it, flip up the plate, and get you. So that seems like a little theatrics to me. But 12 hours he was there. He came from Hawaii, originally from North Carolina, Mr. Ruth Rauth, whatever his name is. He has 74 interactions with law enforcement, including possession of weapons of mass destruction. And his kid came out yesterday. So when I heard about this news, when I chimed back in online, I turned on the news just to get a good laugh out of it because I know whatever's coming from their mouth isn't going to be the truth. But it was interesting because the two main narratives that I heard right away were, number one, it's a lone gunman. This is just the problem in this country. We just have crazy people that just hate Donald Trump, and they work totally alone. They never talk to each other. They never communicate. They don't share the same therapist. They're not taking the same drugs. They don't have the same ideology. They have nothing in common with one another, despite the fact that they have the exact same ideologies about the world. They have the exact same political views, donations. They have some of them in many shootings have the same therapist, and many of them take the same medications. So we'll squash that narrative right away. However, what they came out and said was a lone gunman. That was a big thing, using an AK-47, which anybody who knows anything about guns, like that is one of the more inaccurate long-range weapons. So if you're shooting somebody from 400 to 600 yards away, you're not going to use an AK-47. There's too much kick. 7.62 is a huge round for close quarters. You would use like a 308 hunting rifle or something like that. Now the reports are saying it's an SKS. I won't get too much into the gun things. If you're not a gun person, you're not going to understand that anyway. But could be an SKS, could be whatever it is. But it has a scope on it. I don't know. I know a lot of military guys, and I know a bunch of people who are snipers, and not one of them said that they would ever use an AK-47 for a long distance shot ever. So that's an important thing. Now this guy Routh was a former Legion recruiter for the Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. He's buddied up with Hillary Clinton's, celebrity chef. He's buddied up with all these people. So there's plenty of stories out there. I think the most interesting thing behind this is now the second time that BlackRock directly or BlackRock affiliates that are funded by BlackRock money have shorted the stock DJT. The Trump media stock was shorted on Friday. So just like it was shorted the day before he was shot at in Butler, Pennsylvania. They're trying to profit, just like they did on 9/11, on a predicted crisis that will cause chaos in this country. That part's pretty obvious. $11.1 million in shorts took place on Friday, all linked back to BlackRock. That's an undeniable fact that you cannot, forget anytime soon. Now, some of the sleuths online, the strangest thing about the last 5 to 10 years in America is that most of us realize now the media works for globalists, works for communists, Zionists, whatever you want to call them, deep state, Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. We realize that they're their mouthpiece, the megaphone. And many of us have dedicated parts of our lives away from our families to, I guess, serve this country, or at least serve one another, to try to get some real good information. And there's some really good people at it. There's some people at it that aren't so good, but they're trying. So even if they're not good at it, I say God bless you and keep doing it. We need help. We need to know what's happening in this country. And the news is never going to tell us. The government is certainly never going to tell us. But some of these sleuths out there actually heard his name from the shooting right away and went through and screenshotted all of his social media before the FBI could delete it, which is a standard process for our FBI, like it or not. They delete everyone's social media so that only they can actually investigate something. Well, they've done such a brilliant job on the last assassination attempt, we still have no idea whether it was one of the three guys that they blamed for the shooting within the first 24 hours. We know nothing about that assassination attempt. Absolutely nothing. What we do know is that the press will lie about it through their teeth until the end of days. That part, I believe, is the most important thing to pay attention to. I'm very glad President Trump is safe. It's painful to watch Alex Soros and Clinton and Obama put out tweets going, violence is never to be part of politics. The overall idea of politics for most Americans is becoming something you can't pay attention to before you eat anymore. And that's a major problem in a country that depends upon voters to make decisions for the whole. So we're watching this destabilization, demoralization of a society occur on almost every front, which is what I'm going to wrap this up with today. But the lone gunman narrative doesn't work. He's only been charged with a gun charge. All of his social media is screenshotted by some B I know. I won't say the word. I'm trying to let kids watch this show. On her screen name is actually L on Twitter. She screenshotted everything and put it out there. Earlier today, Trump put out a statement about the real problem that you can actually pinpoint from this event, which is the media propaganda and the way that they are using MK Ultra mind control to activate people of weak minds who have very strong ideologies that adjoin with them. Now, I've had many people actually, there's some of you who already know what this is, but I've had many people reach out and say, Eric, can you do an episode on MK Ultra? I don't know what that is. And I certainly will. I'll actually put that together next week for you. This week is very busy at work. To make it very simple, MK Ultra is a CIA program where they use trauma-based inducement to create fear within people to control them. It's a very well-known fact. This is what every emperor and Caesar throughout all of history has done. When the peasants uprise, you scare them because scared people are easy to control. Now, MK Ultra uses severe trauma and drug use in order to manipulate the minds of people to get them to do what you want. The best way to do it is to look through Zoolander, that old movie that Ben Stiller did about being a male model. He was under MK Ultra, where they snapped a finger and he became an assassin. It's a real thing. It's a very real thing, but I'm not going to go through it today. I will do a 15-minute video, a simple person's breakdown of how MK Ultra works. But the basics of it is you use trauma and fear to dictate future behavior. So the fear that gets induced to people is for people who don't have the gumption, the time, the effort, or the desire to read and think for themselves, those who just want the mainstream narrative. The mainstream narrative about Donald Trump has always been that he's scary, he's a threat to democracy, all these other things. He's Hitler, he's this. They never call him Stalin, who murdered way more people. That's because they're communists. And they use these things to scare these people and make them believe that Donald Trump is going to destroy the country. So you must kill him in order to take control back, to protect our democracy, which is Soviet democracy, which is not a democracy at all. And if you look at where this guy has gone, Ukraine, he went to Ukraine, threw a big flag out there. I support Ukraine. I hate Russia. Russia noticed him a year ago. The FBI knows who he is. He was actually arrested for locking himself in I think a tire shop with a firearm and a standoff from police. This is not a good person at all. And he was activated in some way. I don't know how, that would be complete speculation, but he certainly was activated enough to camp out for 12 hours to try to shoot President Trump. That's the facts of what we know at this point in time. So I'll get into speculation as it comes out, but the facts of the matter are, I try to look at what are the takeaways. The takeaways are that everyone knows that places like the Cincinnati Enquirer and USA Today have put out headlines just as I called right as soon as the first assassination attempt occurred. If you watch that episode, I told you for the next 6 months that the media would be blaming Trump assassinations on Trump. And that's exactly what we're watching right now. The Cincinnati Enquirer came out today and said that, point blank, headline of the article, all of Trump's assassinations are his fault. He needs to stop talking in order to stop being shot at in a nation of free speech. USA Today came out and said that the design of the golf course is what created a possible shooter. So now it's not even blaming it on Trump. They're blaming it on Trump because he had a bad designer for a golf course that didn't, 50 years ago when this golf course was built, that, Trump should have hired him before he owned the property. He should have made sure that the course was bulletproof, literally. I mean, this is a sick society that we live in. These are sick people that are in charge of spreading a message that goes into the minds of hundreds of millions of people. We live in a depraved society that is being demoralized and destabilized right in front of our face, and most people have no idea that it's happening or what its intentions are. But that is happening. Thankfully, one person who I'm glad to hear this from, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has said no to the FBI. He will not be giving this guy up from the state of Florida for them to make up a story and ship off into a world of freedom. He is going to keep him in Florida and prosecute him himself. Now watch what happens with this. You're going to watch the federal government intervene with a state official and try to take over this investigation. Watch how hard the government tries to get this guy out of the hands of the state of Florida and into a safe harbor with the FBI, who's probably gave him Trump's private schedule, to be honest. Even this guy, they found that he was followed by a lady named Sue Kim, who he had private conversations with. Sue Kim is a former CIA operative. Nothing here is coincidental. And when the media comes out and says very confidently, this is a lone gunman, that is what's called Mockingbird Media, also a CIA operation. It's what they're told to tell you. And when they keep regurgitating it over and over again, 35% of the nation will believe it. And now we have another way to destabilize the nation by having no unanimous consent behind any of the major events that have happened in our lifetime. This is exactly how it works. And I'm going to show you how to combat this at the very end of the episode. So where we are right now, thank God for DeSantis and what he's doing right now. Hopefully this turns out to be good. I think this guy, this guy's a relative nobody in the world. There's actually another article from like 25 years ago that he was considered a hero in his hometown. Very, very strange stuff that's happening. We still don't know about, July 13th, yet alone yesterday. So let's give this a little bit of time to play out. I always kind of rotate on that 48 to 72 hour rule, let things happen. I'm not trying to be the guy to break stories and be known as the guy who figured it out. Somebody else will do that. I've got my own ideas in my head, but I certainly don't want to overstep my boundaries and really make a statement that might be harmful to all the things happening out there. Now, along with this, this is a great distraction, by the way, tremendous distraction from the fact that the United States, the UK, France, and most of NATO are now getting ready to approve the use of long-range missiles deep into Russia, all the way into Moscow. Following that statement by that collaboration, President Putin came out and said, if U.S. weapons are used within Russia, we will have no choice but to attack and go nuclear. I will remind the audience that Putin has offered peace 3 times already. He has offered peace to Ukraine and Zelensky 3 times on very simple terms. Remain neutral, do not join NATO, and make sure that all of the biolabs are removed from our border. It's pretty much what he's asking. Just remain neutral. We don't want Ukraine, another nation on our border, joining NATO. Now, Ukraine has been declined multiple times, well over a dozen times, for political corruption. So this shouldn't even be a conversation we're having, but they're pushing to have NATO accept Ukraine along the pathway. But I think it's important to remember, as someone who studies history in my free time a lot, is that people forget the peace offerings. When someone wants a war, they will ignore peace offerings. World War II had 24 instances of peace offerings before it really escalated. And they are moving in the same exact pattern as they did in World War II. Even a part of land that was taken from one nation to another where a genocide occurred, calling in the former leader of these people to reclaim their freedom. It's the exact same thing that we saw in World War II. They're recreating it now. Perhaps Albert Pike wasn't a bad guy. Maybe he was Nostradamus, but he predicted that all these things would happen. And then in World War III, the Christians and Muslims would kill each other while the deep state, or whatever name you'd like to give them, rule the world. That's kind of where we're at, and they're really pushing that agenda, especially when you're talking about using Iran to move. So Iran is now sending long-range missiles to Russia, and Houthis and Lebanon and Israel is its own grandiose story. I had many conversations on my chat today. I'm not going to cover that today. It's a whole different story that's much deeper and darker than the other ones. Now, what we are seeing here, not to mention, Israel is a very important thing to play in this because they have the Samson option, which is essentially a go nuclear button at any given time, and nobody knows where their nukes are. It's the only nation in the world we have no idea where those nukes are. At the same time, we also have destabilization happening in our school system. So interesting topic was from last week, from the debate where Trump said they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. I posted stuff out about this. It's not a funny topic. Nobody wants to talk about dogs and cats being eaten. However, it is part of traditional voodoo practice and Haitian diet. So when you bring Haitians into this country and you don't force them to assimilate into our culture, and we have to assimilate with theirs, that's the easiest, most digestible dark part of the byproduct of bringing in illegals. Now, Haitians do eat cats. They actually do drain the blood from cats in voodoo because they believe the cats give them magic power. National Geographic, if you're on my Telegram chat or follow me on Twitter, I posted the National Geographic documentary about this. National Geographic made a documentary about voodoo magic, animal sacrifice, and all those things. National Geographic. So it is a very real practice in their society. I promise you, people moving here from other countries aren't dying to become like Americans. They're dying to make America become like their homeland that they've escaped from for whatever reason. So this assimilation is going well beyond just the dogs and cats thing. But I will say this, that my daughter had a sleepover with a couple of friends, and they were making a bunch of noise upstairs. And I came up here, and they were dancing to the remix of "They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats." So whether you like the topic or not, what's happening is millions and millions of people are now absorbing the narrative that they could be eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio, which is happening. There's plenty of video evidence from Springfield, from Dayton, from Columbus, of these things happening with Haitians, right? So the goose photo that you see of the guy carrying the goose, that's actually from Columbus. That's not from Springfield. Springfield is now coming out with their videos, and there's a lot of good people in Springfield, Ohio. It's right near Lima, Ohio. I have friends there. There's a lot of good people out there, and they're doing their best to try to catch these things, but they have jobs too. They don't have people who can just sit around the park all day and wait for them to catch it, but they are showing videos of pig bodies being found with no bones, which is part of a voodoo ritual that they would perform. So they're certainly sacrificing animals. I don't know if they're eating them. I'd assume that would be next step if you're sacrificing them anyway. However, and God was very, very clear about animal sacrifice, by the way. God was very clear about that. So was Jesus. Both very clear. Animal sacrifice is not necessary. But the schools are being disrupted. So the corrupt governor, Mike DeWine of Ohio, has come out and said that they have now gotten 33 threats on Springfield school systems from email addresses tracked overseas. And Springfield colleges, thankfully somebody on my chat actually shares the updates she gets from her son's college that go there. They are now going to virtual learning for the next week. So even if it was fake, even if Trump just said they're eating dogs and cats and it was a lie, which it's not, even if that were the case, no matter what's happening, something is demoralizing and destabilizing that region, period. People are scared to leave their home. There's 20,000 people they don't know. They don't speak their language. They're all driving new cars. They have no idea how to drive. They keep filing for driver's license permits, all this stuff where you have 90 days to take it. They keep coming back in and getting these forbearances upon them being required to get a driver's license. One thing that is guaranteed to be real and factual is the fact that the people in Springfield, Ohio are paying a hell of a lot more money for their car insurance because these Haitians don't know how to drive and are crashing into everything. So chaos is brewing in that part of the world. And I promise you, this is not the last. This is the first town you've heard of this happening in. I guarantee it's not going to be the last. Now, this all brings me back to an interview a former KGB agent named Yuri Bezmenov did in 1981. And maybe I'll do an episode one time of all the forewarning we've gotten throughout history. And it's plentiful. So if you can go all the way back to 1871, which I think is a very pivotal year in world history, especially here and for Europe. And I'm doing an episode on that in the next month. I'm spending a lot of time at night just trying to correlate a timeline of events from 1871 to today to show how we got to exactly where we are today and where the major inconsistencies in history and narrative occur. I think it's a really important timeline to have, and it has taken me much longer than I anticipated to put that together because there are so many things that happen around the world by the same coordinated group of people who have run the world for much longer than 1871. But if you go back in time, you can look at speeches that were given at places like Harvard and Yale. You can look at, as silly as you think he is, Jesse Ventura warned us of many things, especially vaccines. And, one of the big warning signals we've gotten throughout history, I believe it was on ABC Nightly News or 2020 or 60 Minutes. They had a former KGB agent named Yuri Bezmenov who came on and he said, there is a very standard protocol in communist nations. It's a 4-step plan to take over a nation without firing a shot. Those 4 steps are to demoralize, destabilize, create a crisis, and then normalize. So how would this process look? Well, how do you demoralize a nation, right? You basically make faith a laughing stock. You convince people that there is no higher power. You remove their ability to discern what is right and what is wrong. You'd put things in place like abortion, pornography, drugs, kids talking back to parents being normalized. You would normalize sin or chaos to demoralize a nation. This was once a very proud, very moral nation. And I think if you look back it's very easy. If you're too young to think back, the easiest thing that you could do is you could look back at television shows from the 1950s and 60s. Watch black and white TV. Very wholesome, very moral. Then watch TV today. I really stopped watching primetime TV during a show called Hannibal that glorified a serial killer and put gory, scenes of men, a guy hanging from a tree completely disemboweled. That was on like one of the big 3 networks. You weren't even allowed to cuss on those networks when I was a kid. And now you have dead bodies being ripped apart, glorifying serial killers. That is a process called demoralization, which has occurred in America. We're past the point of no return on that, but God, right? There's always but God. Then you destabilize the nation. How do you destabilize a nation? You create civil unrest, you create political violence, you create a stock market where you go really, really high and then really, really low and completely destabilize an economy. You lose value within a nation by printing money and sending it overseas. You make illegal practices legal. I'm going to do an episode later this week on the NFL, which I'm an absolute sports lover. I love sports my whole life. I was an athlete my whole life. I barely watch them anymore because I know what it is. But you create things like the NFL, where people will go watch football and drink alcohol and eat food that's no good for them instead of going to God and worshiping. You'll give them fantasy football to occupy their minds. You will give them betting venues at every click of a mouse or of a screen to allow them to wager their money upon the results of other men on a sporting field hundreds of miles away. We're watching the destabilization and demoralization of America with our very own eyes. The next step is crisis. Per Yuri, that would be the next step, is real crisis. If you think we're in crisis now, wake up. Crisis can get a heck of a lot worse than it is right now, and I believe that's the next phase. Now, we've already gone through this in a microcosm. So you could look at the demoralization of America with political campaigns. So they have attacked President Trump, lied about him as much as they possibly can. They have made him out to be a villain, as they have with every other nationalist throughout all of world history. They have started to destabilize the economy, the political environment, and your faith within the system. That is now opening up the doors for the first crisis, which occurred on July 13th, the first assassination attempt of Donald Trump. That got a lot of news for about 48 hours, and within 10 days, it completely disappeared from the news cycle. This one, on the other hand, will get news until probably Wednesday before it also disappears from the news cycle. They are now in the process. They've gone through demoralization, destabilization, and a crisis. Now they are normalizing assassination attempts. I think that's a very obvious thing to see. Violence has already been normalized in this nation through video games and TV and things like that. But in the mix, you also have the Pope. The Pope came out the other day and said, the American people only have a choice between the lesser of two evils, which in general, for most of the history of the United States, I would agree. I think that in this country, we have nothing but the best of a bad decision. I think that's most of our choices as Americans today. I believe Donald Trump is the clear winner of this election. If you poll the people, I believe he's absolutely the best choice for this country. I believe that down the road, we'll find better leaders, greater leaders, but we have not seen one as good as Donald Trump in the actual things he's done versus the words they say. And the Pope came out and said that the American people have a choice between two evils. One, who wants to kill babies, and that's obvious. The abortion topic will be shoved down your throat for the next 60 days, guaranteed, and even no matter what the outcome of the election is, that will get amplified. They cannot have a nation of people getting patriotic, wanting to become nationalist and protect their own country without giving their money away to everyone else. They cannot have that with a growing population of actual Americans. You have to bring in a growing population of non-Americans to continue to demoralize, destabilize, and eventually lead to a crisis, to normalize the events of the past. The Pope has come out and said, you have a choice between someone who wants to kill babies and someone who wants to deport illegals. This is not a difficult decision. Those illegals had a home where they came from. They can easily go back to that home. Whatever dangers abound them in their foreign lands, I feel for them. My soul goes out to them. My heart pours out to them, and I will pray to God for them every day. But I will not let them into this nation through an illegal model. You want to come into this nation, let us know who you are and how you're going to contribute to the betterment of this country, and you are going to be welcomed with open arms. In fact, that is what I believe will happen with migration, that eventually legal migration through the right system will be moralized and normalized. However, right now, that is a wild, wild west thing that's happening right now. And the Pope himself has already supported LGBTQ, abortion, all these other things. You know, people are looking right now. They're looking to friends, to politicians, to athletes, to celebrities, to everyone but God for the answers. They are looking everywhere in their life except to the heavens from the person, the being that created you and sent you here for a purpose. You are bigger than these problems. You are bigger than the problems you have at home. What you have to offer this world is greater than you imagine. Get out and start supporting other people. We all need to come together and unify. At this point in time, I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what color you are. I don't care about any of that stuff. I care about my children's and your children's futures. I care about this country being remoralized and not demoralized further. I care about American people bonding together to seek the truth and demand it from those who have the answers. This is not going to come from a politician. I just don't believe, the political system can be cleaned up pretty easily. You get the right people in office, you get rid of the wrong people, you rewrite legislation. It takes years. It's going to take years no matter what. That part can be cleaned up. It's society that I'm worried about. I'm not worried about the future of this government. It's too large anyway. People need to go. It's way too large. And eventually, I think Trump is the right guy to put into position to clean that mess up. He cannot clean and will not clean up your neighborhood. That is on you. That is on me. That is on our children to be able to remoralize American society and build a stronger future through faith and family and freedom and the things that are really of value in this world. We have to start talking openly and honestly. We have to start coming together as a whole unified society together to remoralize and strengthen America before it's too late. And we are very, very much deep into the fourth quarter of this ball game with not too much time on the clock, and we're down. So that's all I have for you here today. We have about 4 minutes before Trump gets on his Twitter space. If it was like anything like last time, it'll be hacked trying to stop it from happening. I'm very interested to hear about his crypto project. I don't know if I'll be interested in it myself, but tomorrow I'll give you a rundown of what I think. What I know, if true already, is that this project will already be a centralized basic crypto proof of stake model where the founders retain 70% of the tokens and us plebs get 30%. But I don't know if that's true. So I'm certainly going to listen with an open mind and open ears, and I'll give you my breakdown of what I think it could or could not do tomorrow. And until then, God bless each and every one of you. I love y'all. And I just hope you have a great day. And we'll definitely see you tomorrow around the same time. I'm trying to get regular here a couple days a week, 3 days a week at 6 o'clock, and then throwing in a recorded video. I am going to have, debating whether it'll be live or recorded, but I'm going to have our first interview kicked off with my friend Lucas on Thursday, talking about the spiritual state of the world, where we are, where we got lost, how we got sidetracked, and how we get back on track. He and I are just really close friends, and we have some amazing conversations around my fire pit. So I'm hoping to share that type of conversation with all of you on Thursday. If we record it, we'll set it out the next week, but more than likely it'll be live at 8 o'clock on Thursday. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all there. Until next time, I'm Eric Rice. This is The Rice Report. God bless you. God bless this country, and we'll see you again very soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.